Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you there. I was busy indulging in one of my favorite pastimes, enjoying a good book. On this week's episode of Trevor Johnson's Wild America, I'm going to have a lot of time to read books, because we haven't started fishing yet. Join me in this week's episode as I talk about books, as well as some of the things we're doing here in Igigik, Alaska to try and pass the time while we wait for the 2012 summer salmon fishing season to begin. My name is Trevor Johnson, and this is Trevor Johnson's Wild America. So it's been, almost a week and a half now, I think, maybe longer. It's been almost a week and a half now, and we haven't started fishing at all. Some of the set nets have started fishing, but none of us drift netters have actually started fishing. So things in Igigik, as you can imagine, people are feeling pretty cooped up. It's getting a little crazy here. So this is the annual beginning of the summer bonfire. I don't know if it has an official name, but it's hard to see, but they're going to be burning a giant wooden fish here in a little bit. And there's not many people here yet, but I guess everybody shows up. All the different set netters and drift netters and cannery workers. And right now it's pretty early in the evening. If you can believe it, it's like 10:30, 11 right now. But I guess later it's going to get kind of rowdier and rowdier. Supposedly, as the night gets really crazy, a whole bunch of fights break out. But so basically, if you've ever wanted to see a fight between native Inuit fishermen and Ukrainian foreign exchange students and college students from Portland, this is pretty much the place to be. So here it is, the annual bonfire. Hopefully you can see it. Oh, something's going down. Okay, I gotta go. Goodbye. It seems like the simple way to do it would just be to say, well, you guys can go fish and catch what you want. The interesting thing about fishing here is that we have to take into account the actual life cycle of the salmon. So salmon start out as eggs, usually in a lake or a river, and usually pretty far north. I think the farthest south that any salmon run occurs is northern California. The interesting thing about salmon is they actually go from being a freshwater fish to being a saltwater fish back to being a freshwater fish, right? So they start out here, they're eggs, they're just tiny little fetus fish inside their eggs. After they hatch, they become fries. That just means a smaller infant salmon. And what they start to do is they start swimming upstream towards the ocean. So it would be downstream, it's rivers from the ocean. So they start swimming towards the ocean either way. And as soon as they get to the ocean, they start becoming a saltwater fish. They act just like any other fish. They swim in the same latitudes. They're farther south that most fish do in the Pacific. Not necessarily in the colder waters of the northern Pacific. They eat krill and plankton and just other different kinds of smaller fish. And yeah, they just kind of live it up in the middle of the Pacific for a few years. There's one species of salmon in the Atlantic, but they're not very good to eat. So then, pretty soon, nature comes a knocking and tells them, "Okay, salmon, you gotta have children." Another thing about salmon too is they give birth once, and then afterwards they die. They start swimming back to the exact spot where they were spawned. And when they do that, I don't know if you can see in this picture here, the males actually grow a beak almost, and they grow a hump on their back. As the salmon are swimming upriver to spawn, they're actually physically dying because they've become so used to salt water that the fresh water is slowly killing them. When we talk about red salmon, they're a type of salmon that as they're swimming up the river, their skin is decaying, so you can see the muscle underneath. which is also red, and that's why we call them red salmon. So then once the salmon have reached the exact spot where they were spawned, where they were born, the female will release their eggs just kind of onto the river floor. It's called roe for salmon. Release their sperm just kind of all over. It's just how they do it, I guess. And hopefully the baby salmon are fertilized, and then that would complete the life cycle of the salmon. Start all over again. So what that means for us, basically, is that however many salmon actually escape our nets and don't get caught will determine however many salmon there will be 40 years from now, because they live for 4 years. They are born, go out in the ocean, and then roughly 4 summers later they come back in. The Fish and Game is constantly regulating when we're allowed to fish, with the idea of letting a really large amount of the salmon get through. We're basically always listening to these reports where Fish and Game is tracking. It's called escapage. How many are getting up this river? And once an acceptable amount has kind of escaped, they'll let us out for maybe a little bit, and then they'll see how many we're catching, and then maybe based off that they'll let more through. You're at the mercy of both Fish and Game and the actual fish. So if you were ever curious, or if you're ever thinking about going up to fish for red salmon. So recently I decided I would jump on the old bandwagon and read the wildly popular young adult fiction series, The Hunger Games. Right, so I'll read that, see what's going on, see if I enjoy that. That's what the kids are into these days, right? But yeah, I was into them up until most of the end of the book series, the end of Mockingjay. I don't know if you've read them, you may have a strong opinion about it one way or the other, but I really felt like the way she ended this entire book series was monumentally, epically terrible. It's the worst ending of a book ever. Without describing it specifically, ruining it for you, even though, let's face it, she kind of ruins it for you by writing such a terrible ending to a book. I decided I have to do something about it. I'm going to write Suzanne Collins a letter in a new section I'm calling Dear Suzanne Collins, my name is Trevor Johnson. I'm a 26-year-old graduate student and substitute teacher who is currently spending his summer commercial fishing for salmon in Igigik, Alaska. Recently, I read your best-selling young adult fiction novels, The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. I'll get right to the point, Mrs. Collins. I think you need to change the ending of Mockingjay. It's total. There are many reasons for this, which I will be able to expand upon more fully in subsequent letters, as I'm going to keep writing you until you change the ending of this book series. Until that point, I'll just say this. Reading Mockingjay was like having someone walk right up to me and kick me as hard as they could in the balls, and then walking away without explaining anything whatsoever. I'm not just saying this because I wanted the book to have a happy ending. The ending of this book was completely terrible and didn't make sense at all. It sucked monumentally. The ending of Mockingjay was like I had done something wrong and the universe was punishing me by visiting this book upon me. This book literally ruined several days of my life. As I mentioned earlier, I will be expanding upon why I feel this way, and some changes I think you can make both in this book and in the rest of your book series in future letters. Until then, I will be commercial fishing here in Igigik. If you want to write me back, you can use the return address on the letter. Just make sure to specify that the letter is going to Trevor Johnson at Alaska General Seafoods. You can also contact me through my video blog, Trevor Johnson's Wild America at WordPress.com, in which I will be chronicling, among other things, my attempts to convince you to rectify this grievous error. Till then, sincerely yours, Trevor Johnson.
She will kiss you to your lips, believe but she will not take her dress off. Americana, Tropicana. All the sailor boys have demons. They sing, oh Kentucky, why did you forsake me? If I was meant to sail the sea, why did you make me? It should have been